Motion to approve them?
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself today.
Good for
I
you.
don't need to be cutting you off.
I'll
You're
second.
right.
That motion.
All right, any questions or corrections about the minutes from December 17th? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tammy. Audience participation. Anyone from the audience have any questions or comments other than what's already on the agenda? Hearing none, we will go forward. We have no final approval, site plans, preliminary hearing, public hearing, or findings of fact. But we do have a continuation of old business before, and which is basically looking at the framework for the portal rental ordinance and looking at what we decided last month and what to do next. Before that, I've asked Chris Willoughby to give us a little update. As you may have known, and now you've got a mailing about it, our Indiana legislature has legislation that is moving quickly through the House and the Senate that has to do with the work of the Plan Commission in several areas, including specifically the ones that we're working on right now. So I asked Chris if he could give a kind of summary of it. We did produce the two-page summary that you got mailed out today regarding HB 1001 and 1210, which give you some notes so you can, cliff notes, so you can kind of make sense of what it is. But I've asked Chris to summarize what it is, what the impact is, and what you can expect.
Well, I don't have a lot to add to that summary because it does hit the main points, and I'm sure Mike will have some things to add. It probably, HB 1001, by definition, and its number is the highest priority bill that is downstate, and it is moving pretty quickly, and ultimately the effect, it originally was intended to deal with the Fishers and Carmel rental. It has turned into ultimately probably affecting even grandfathered in short-term rentals in other communities that there weren't many. So, but you do some of the work, a lot of the work that you've already done and are headed. It seems like that won't be affected as much because you get to put some things into for safety and right. So, but that one, by all accounts, other work for other towns and lobbyists that they work. By all accounts, that one's going to pass. And the same with 1210. 1210 deals with some of the things that, that does put on the brakes for ADUs and because just as of yesterday, there was an amendment that was adopted that is approximately 200 pages to the already proposed bill. And so some of those things have nothing to do, the big summaries are here of the things that will affect, but there are all kinds of, and that's a DLGF bill that now there's some HOA provisions and there's some other, but most of them, Rob has captured in this summary and, including, how ADUs and, multifamily dwellings and uses are going to be allowed. So that really, and there's some opt-out provisions that may be, so you'll have some work and so you're headed in that direction anyway. It just may redirect what your efforts are going to be and what you have to do to initiate some changes to the zoning ordinances and make some things simple, right? Some of the things that we've discussed, it will essentially make some uses that might be illegal now legal by definition in residential by right.
Mike, you want anything from the perspective of the building department?
Sure. I spoke to some folks in Chesterton earlier today, and they're more up in arms in it than, they have a lot more places to build than we do. So I can say they're not very pleased with 1001. But one of the, and like Rob's gotten here, one of the things it allows is single family, you could put two houses on one parcel. We do have a specific ordinance that says you can't. I can think of 3 off the top of my head that are existing now. One's at Porter Beach. My concern with that is if you can just throw another house on a parcel, I'm not even worried about the tax problem with that. That's county's issue to figure out, but, you know, we have codes with setbacks and requirements, and that's listed in the next section about, lot sizes and density and setbacks and whatnot. So I'm not really sure what their intent is with that and how that would work, but you start slapping an extra house on a lot, you're adding, I don't know what, tiny houses and, you know, don't have setback requirements and whatnot, that's not good. They also say you can put a duplex literally in a single-family residence zone. So we just had that in BZA, where the remonstrators all came out and said, well, I don't want a duplex there, I'm in a single-family zoning. And so this would allow that, you know, and slap up a duplex anywhere you want to. Now, I live out in the boonies, so we've got manufactured homes and regular houses and all kinds of stuff sticking up there, and around the corner there's trailers. I mean, I'm out in Porter County, that's just the way it is out in the county. But generally, in an organized town or city, you've got zoning, you've got a zoning map, you've got things in specific areas, and then you have a zoning code that specifically puts forth requirements for the zoning area. This would toss it all upside down, and we'd have to redo our zoning code. So that's not the best idea. It also puts in there, accessory dwelling units are permitted up to 75% the size of the house with no additional parking requirements. Doesn't say much about setbacks. I didn't get to read all that because it's so many hundreds of pages long. And we talked about ADUs, but that would just permit them anywhere with no control by us. And I'm not for uncontrolled construction, because you end up with substandard construction. And it's very difficult to police or monitor or permit or anything. So if people just start slapping up junk houses everywhere, that's not a good idea. So yeah, we're all opposed to that. It's already flown through the House and now it's in Senate, and like Chris said, they're adding stuff to it. So it's gonna go through. There's a section in Rob put in here, if the unit does not adopt an ordinance to opt out. Well, so at least we have the option to opt out of some of these things. But the first part is still gonna go through, you can't opt out of that. So there's 2 houses on a lot, duplexes everywhere, ADUs, that would go through. There's some stuff in here about permit fees. We just passed the permit fees, and ours will go into effect on the 4th, so we're okay with that.
And ultimately, just to be clear, it doesn't affect your ability to do it, it just changes. So right now, you just did it, so it's 90 days, it changes it to 6 months.
Changes that.
To 6 months.
It makes it more difficult to actually get permit fees changed, but we'd be done, so
That's right.
we're ahead of
Yeah,
that.
that's good.
Which is good. The, one of the things that was in there that's not an issue here, but it is in different places, is how long it takes someone to review a building permit. They put a time limit on that, because apparently there's some places where they just park it and not approve it. Well, if you park it too long, it's approved, so I'm not worried about that. We don't have that problem here, we get stuff done pretty quick, we don't have that much construction. The other one, 1210, it's got some stuff in there about restrictions on rental property. So if it keeps changing, we you know, I've got the draft done. Rob's got this framework here. We've got the draft done. We sent it out. There's some questions we still want to answer before the next meeting, and then we'll have that to everybody. And regardless, we'll put that forward, and then if it needs to get changed later, we'll change it later, but at least we'll have a rental code.
Yeah, and I think most of what's in.
I don't think it affects most of what we had in there.
No, because yours goes to standards, you're not really
Yeah.
prohibiting, and I guess the gray areas will be as things play out, is whether some of your restrictions start to hinder or prohibit the ability to rent them out. But right now, as
Yeah,
proposed,
We
and
don't have that in there.
what your intentions are, is really just standardization and having people register so that you can make sure that things are habitable and up to code.
Most of what I drafted, when you see it, you're gonna go, geez, that's a lot of stuff. It's mostly basically what the requirements for habitable structure or rentable house are. So it talks about room sizes and electrical requirements and furnaces and heat, you know, it's got all that stuff in it. So there's a lot of dry technical stuff in there. That's not gonna change. That's just so we can make sure people are living in, not living in a dump, I guess, put it that way. But, that stuff will stay the same. The registration, we can't charge a fee for that, so we're not gonna do that, but we can put in inspection fees that are basically how long it takes Jay and I to go through building. So if it takes Jay and I an hour, then it needs to cover our hour plus administrative fees, so that's where the fees come from. So I left those blank for now, I'll fill them in before the next meeting and then shoot that out to everybody to look at, but.
Yeah, and back to 1001, right, that, the intention is to encourage, to address the housing shortage, right?
Right.
Well, it's, you know, it certainly isn't tailored to every situation, and it's encouraging density as part of that, and there'll be people who are fans of this and people who are not, and at the same time, there isn't a whole bunch you could have done on your best day to stop that train. So we'll know soon what that's gonna end up being for both of those bills, because they're definitely fast-tracked and.
Yeah, my biggest concern is Porter Beach, because people are gonna go, well, I'm gonna just slap up whatever at Porter Beach. And those are very small lots. So if you start taking out, you know, requirements for, and I'm not gonna take it out, we can opt out of it, prohibit, you know, lot sizes, density and whatnot. We'd have to keep that in there for, at least for areas where you have smaller property, like downtown or Porter Beach. You can't just be jamming a house in with no setbacks.
Do they have
Safety
septic
issue.
there, or is it?
It's all septic.
So, and that might be where some things get limited, right, is because you can
Yeah.
only do so much with.
County
with-
has to approve the septic, so at this point, you can't, you're gonna have too much waste to put another unit in down there, so that might stop it anyway.
But some of the uncertainty that sending comments again for others that are, you know, at least trying to influence or have them consider is the uncertainty on infrastructure, right? Don't know, it's definitely gonna be developer driven, and one school of thought is developers are gonna tell you what you need for infrastructure, but you still have to be able to pay for and, but again, septic systems, that'll be regulated on some level by the county, and unless and until that gets changed.
Yeah, and the
right?
state changed septic rules a little over a year ago,
Couple,
so Porter County had to change their rules because they required 1 usable acre, and they had to eliminate the 1 usable acre. So there's a few things that are coming to Plan Commission for subdivisions on Old Porter Road that have to do with that. They cannot require the 1 usable acre. As long as it meets the requirements to fit the septic system in, they can't put the extra acre in. And what they were doing was they would put in what they called a set aside. So if your field failed, you'd have room for a second field. So that got removed. And now it's just whatever per can fit on there. They've also approved, the state approved it, Porter County approved it, and just as of yesterday, I met with a gentleman who installs them, but they have a new septic system. It's an incinerator system. So they've had an incinerator toilet for a while. We used to have one. It's like you put it somewhere where you got a cabin, for instance. So now they have the whole system. So it looks like a furnace, like about as big as this table, and it pumps everything through and burns it. So you end up with ash that's not toxic that you can literally just spread out somewhere, empty the bucket out every once in a while. So somewhere where you can't get a septic system put in, normal septic system, they can use the incinerator system. So we now have at least 2 installers in the area that can put those in. It's a really neat system. I kind of like it. But you don't end up with, I mean, all the water that goes through boils, right? So the liquid boils off. You can either separate the solids out and just pump the liquid into this boiler thing and then pump the tank, or run it all through a grinder pump through the system and burn it, and it just turns it into a bucket of ash.
Carbon.
So it's really neat system. I was kind of excited about it. I just found out about it in December because it's very much new here. It's been going on for 20 years. Companies out of Arkansas. I've been doing it for a long time down there.
And some of that is on the heels of how the state law has changed, that if you have a system that is proven to work,
Yep,
it's kind of starting to turn to be
Gotta-
check the
gotta
box
prove-
type of.
right,
And so, I'm aware of there's one project that's been approved by the county and state level that is just a 10,000 gallon holding tank that they're allowed to use for new construction.
wow.
Mike, at one time they said by 2030, we had to all be on a sewer system.
That's still, we're still trying to get Porter Beach off, we're waiting for the Johnson Inn to get.
Because I know Ogden Dunes, my in-laws lived there,
Yep.
and they came in there and said, you're either gonna go on sewers, or we're gonna condemn your houses. And they did the same thing when I lived in Brumma Park, Acres there. We said, what happens if we don't go in the sewer system? We'll condemn your house, you won't live there.
Yeah,
The- The
there's-
state health department told us that.
There's money for getting rid of septic at beach property. So when the inn gets through probate, that's one of the first things we're gonna get done is run a sewer down there. And then everybody will tie into it. The best reason for it is environmental. It's right next to the lake, so you've got all the septic running in the sand, you're right next to the lake. Really bad idea to have septic systems down by the lake. So once we get those off, that'll help. There's a property on Monroe and Vine, if you know where Monroe and Vine are. It's off Mineral Springs Road. There's a turn in the road, it's a 0.7 acre parcel. Guy couldn't build on it because there's no way to put in a septic. So when they changed the law to make it smaller property, it still wouldn't work because you have to have a drain field around your septic field that can drain to a storm sewer or a ditch, and it's gotta be 32 inches below where it can drain out. Well, he didn't meet that either. So now he can do this incinerator system, and he can build a house there. So he's pretty excited. Just took patience and time and
value
everything
of
brought
that.
up to it, so.
Well, in Ogden Dunes, what it was doing was contaminating the people's wells in there.
So.
You live at the beach, and Rob lives at the beach, and Rob's on a small property, so when people ask me, well, how does that work when I have my septic? I said, well, you flush your toilet, it goes down there and comes back up in your well, so, I mean,
There's
that's
not,
where the water goes down to the aquifer, and it's not that deep, and everything soaks through.
believe it or not, I think about it every day.
I know, that's,
So, I want to bring this back to the matters before us.
Yep,
But, does anybody else have any questions for Chris and Mike about these two pieces of legislation? Granted, they're not done, but they're moving through.
we don't have to do that.
So, thank you, Chris and Mike, appreciate it. When they're done, sure, we're informal here.
Can
What-
you take comments from the public?
Sorry?
Can you take comments from the public on this?
Regard these, I suggest take,
Regarding the state laws,
I would suggest, if you live here, get in touch with Rodney Pohl.
no, it's not that, this has been stuff that I've been reading about for a couple of years. It's not just something in Indiana, there's other states in the country, there's people that have said that the way they keep people out of housing has to do with how local zoning laws are done.
Oh, yeah.
To encourage only certain people in certain areas. And that's why there's a push in other states too, from what I understand, to make changes, to make it more friendly, more helpful for people to get into housing, rather than in a discriminatory manner. And that has gone on where they only want certain people, so they tailor the zoning laws to only have certain developments. So you automatically get rid of multifamily, you automatically put restrictions on things, like you said about the permits. If you don't sign the permits now, right, you can't get it, right? You have, this way, they're good, if you don't sign it within a certain amount of time, it approves it. Because somebody could say, well, we don't want that, so we're just not gonna sign the permit, you know what I mean? And that's not fair, and they're trying to deal with the problem with affordable housing, the problem with homelessness, and the problem with, there's people that wanna arrest homeless people. Well, you arrest them, put them in jail, it costs more than having the programs to help them get stable housing. And there's people in the government that wanna get rid of the programs that help them get stable housing.
Yep, you're seeing the long and complicated history of planning in America play out before you in real time. Anybody else got any questions for them? So, as Chris said, it's moving through. We will know what it is when it's done. Maybe we'll get an update then. It does seem like it will affect the way, the things that we do, and in some cases, how we do them. So we'll probably come back to it later this year. In terms of the project that we had in front of us right now, it does bear on it, but I think we don't have to take any action. At the last meeting, we voted on Jay's motion that we would set aside doing any work on accessory dwelling unit for a while. This just underscores that there's no point in doing it for a while. We'll have to see how that goes. I don't think there's any action for us out of this here, other than to recognize that there's an impact. With respect to the motion to lay things aside, we didn't distribute with the packet to you, just to show you the change document that came out of that meeting, which shows that all the sections and the references to the accessory dwelling unit have been removed. Now that you see that, unless you have any questions, I'll just press accept. The framework document will go to Mike. As Mike said, he's getting close to a wrap-up point and getting ready for us to draft. He can check the framework document versus the ordinance that he's got. Got a couple of questions for Chris about them. The three of us will try to get that ironed out by the next meeting. We can start looking at the code. And again, it will just have to do with the rental ordinance. As Chris and both Mike pointed out, I see no reason based on the legislation that we're looking at here, why that work would be made unnecessary or would disempower it. The 1210 says the section does not prohibit the owner from enforcing any health, safety, reasonable occupancy, etc. I think the work that we did there will still be accepted based on this. So there's no decision, but unless you got any questions, just let you know. I'll push accept on the document, distribute it to you guys and Mike, and we'll get a chance to talk about the code. Hopefully in March, certainly by April, right, Mike?
No, it'll be ready.
Oh, okay, any questions about that or the process going forward?
No, thank you for all your work.
Thank you guys for doing it too. All right, there's no action to be taken there, which brings us back to our agenda. That is the end of old business and update from the town council. Unfortunately, Jim's not here for work tonight. Do I relay anything on behalf of the council, you guys? Anything from you as an attorney?
No?
Anything
I
from
got a
you as,
suggestion for you. If you guys are interested in following these laws, I get updates almost every day or every couple days from either AIM or NWI Forum, and I'm more than happy to forward them to you.
Please.
And then you click on them and it takes you right to the page and you can read it.
Nice.
this is an exceptionally,
There were 1,700 bills introduced in January.
it's a very busy year in Indiana.
Sure is.
And if you go to the Indiana legislative site and you click on a bill or whatever, there's a list of all of the bills, and then it tells you which ones are, what's the word, not being worked on? That's not the right word. Well, they're just, not being, there's nothing going on with them, so they're grayed out. And then the other ones, you can click on the number and it gives you a synopsis of it, and then the whole bill's there, where it is as of today, and you can click on it and go through the whole thing. It's really interesting, but it's nice to keep up on some of that stuff, because it just,
Affects us.
some of it is just like you shake your head and I know, we'll adopt it, whatever comes out of it, we'll just adopt to it. I find, this has nothing to do with this, but every time I look in our code and try to look something up, I find something else wrong with it. So, we're constantly trying to tweak it and correct it, but just little stuff that shouldn't even be in there. You look and you go.
Our
"Wait,
comprehensive plan says we should act on those, so
So
you can bring them
Brenda
to
and
us,
I are-
Mike.
Corinne and I tend to walk back and forth and go, really? Yeah. So, but we'll fix all those. Keep us busy.
All right, commission members, any other comments? If not, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
In favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you all very much. Have a good week.